3 princes. 3 men strong enough to rule a kingdom, but only one throne. And their father, the king, had a problem that kept him awake many nights. Because all 3 of his sons looked worthy. One was loved by the warriors. One was admired for his intelligence. And the third, though quiet, carried a heart the people trusted. So tell me, if you were the king, how would you decide who deserves the throne? Would you choose the strongest, the smartest, or the one who simply looks the most royal? Eze Nnaji was the ruler of Umuokoro. He was a man known for wisdom more than power. He was not the type of king who rushed into anger. When disputes happened between families, he would sit quietly, listening to both sides for a long time before speaking. And when he finally spoke, his judgment was usually so fair that even the losing side often accepted it without argument. Because of this, the kingdom prospered under his rule. But the one thing the king could not defeat was time. The people loved him deeply. But love could not stop age. Eze Nnaji had 3 sons. But they were as different as the sun, the moon, and the night. The first son was Prince Obinna, the eldest. Obinna had the presence of a warrior. He was tall and broad-shouldered, and when he walked into the village square, people noticed him immediately. He loved wrestling competitions, hunting trips, and gatherings with soldiers. Many young men admired him and believed he was born to rule. But Obinna had one weakness. He loved victory more than truth. The second son was Prince Kemdelem. He was not as physically strong as Obinna, but his mind was sharp like a hunter's spear. Kemdelem knew how to talk. When elders argued, he could calm them with clever words. When servants made mistakes, he could twist a story until the blame moved away from him. Many people said he would make a good king because he was intelligent. The third son was Prince Chibuzo. He was the quiet one. Many people did not understand him. While his brothers spent time showing strength and skill, Chibuzo often sat with old farmers under trees, asking them about seasons, soil, and harvest. Sometimes he walked through the farms alone, observing how people worked. One evening, as the sun was sinking and painting the sky red, Eze Nnaji sat alone in the palace courtyard. The king watched the young warriors practicing with spears in the distance. His thoughts were heavy. He knew that once he died, his sons might fight each other for the throne. And when princes fight, kingdoms bleed. That night he called for the council of elders. One by one they arrived, wearing their red caps and carrying their walking sticks. After everyone had taken their seats, the king spoke. My time is running out. I must choose who will rule after me. But I do not know which of my sons truly deserves the throne. The elders discussed many ideas. Some suggested choosing the eldest son. Others suggested observing the princes longer. But the king shook his head. Titles can deceive, he said quietly. Words can deceive. What I need to know is which of them can carry truth in his heart. For a long time, the courtyard was silent. Then slowly, the king told them he had a test but would let them know at the right time. The next morning, the town crier walked through every corner of Umuokoro beating his gong. People of Umuokoro, gather at the palace, the king has an important information to announce. By midday the courtyard was full. Men, women, farmers, traders, and children stood shoulder to shoulder, curious about what the king wanted to announce. The 3 princes stood before their father. A palace servant stepped forward holding 3 small bags. The king looked at his sons carefully before speaking. My sons, he said slowly, a king must be patient. A king must be wise. But above all, a king must be honest. He pointed at the bags. Inside each bag are seeds. Each prince received a bag. You will each receive land to plant these seeds. In 1 year, you will return and show the kingdom what you have grown. The prince whose farm brings the greatest honor to this kingdom will inherit the throne. The crowd began whispering. The task sounded simple. But the king's face remained serious. Immediately, the kingdom became restless with speculation. Most believed Obinna would win. Some supported Kemdelem. Very few mentioned Chibuzo. Prince Obinna walked into his mother's chamber with confidence. Queen Adeku was already smiling. I heard your father has finally started preparing you for the throne, she said proudly. Obina showed her the bag of seeds. He wants us to plant them and return in 1 year. Adeku nodded immediately. That is easy, she said. My son, listen carefully. You are the first son of the king. This throne is already yours by right, but the world is not always fair. Sometimes people try to take what belongs to you. You must win this test, no matter what happens. I will not fail, mother. And in his heart, the fear of losing had already begun growing. Prince Kemdelim visited Queen Ifunanya, his mother, later that evening. She was sitting near the window, weaving a small basket. He placed the bag of seeds before her. The king says we must grow crops with these seeds, he explained. Ifunanya examined the bag carefully. Then she smiled slightly. A wise man does not only follow instructions, she said. She looked directly into his eyes. Winning is important, but knowing how to win is even more important. Her words stayed in Kemdelem's mind as he left the room. Prince Chibuzo visited Queen Obiageli quietly. She was outside the palace speaking with an elderly woman who had come for help. After the woman left, Chibuzo sat beside his mother. He placed the seeds in her hands. The king has given us a test. She studied the seeds for a moment. Then she returned them to him. My son, she said gently, do you know why your father is respected in this kingdom? Because people trust him. Many men can rule with power, but very few can rule with truth. Whatever happens in this test, promise me one thing. Do not let the desire to win take away your honesty. Chibuzo nodded slowly. I promise, mother. The princes received lands in different parts of the kingdom. Prince Obina quickly hired many workers. He ordered them to clear bushes and prepare the soil immediately. He wanted the largest farm anyone had ever seen. Prince Kemdelim worked more carefully. He visited experienced farmers and asked questions about soil and weather. Prince Chibuzo worked quietly on his land himself before accepting help. He held the seeds in his hand for a long time before planting them. Something about them felt strange. But he said nothing. The seeds were planted. Then the waiting began. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing grew. Prince Obina grew frustrated. He blamed the workers for planting badly. They dug the soil again. Still nothing. Prince Kemdelim became suspicious. He dug up a seed and examined it carefully. It looked dry. Almost lifeless. Meanwhile, Prince Chibuzo continued watering his land every morning. Villagers walking past his farm began laughing. They saw him watering bare soil. Some farmers shook their heads. But Chibuzo kept watering. He kept waiting. Months passed. The farms remained empty. But pride is a heavy burden. Prince Obina imagined standing before the whole kingdom with nothing to show. The thought made him angry. One night he made a decision. He secretly bought fresh seeds from traders who came from distant villages. Soon, green crops began appearing on his farm. Prince Kemdelim also faced the same fear. He convinced himself that the king simply wanted to see successful farms. So he too replaced the seeds. His farm soon became full and beautiful. But Prince Chibuzo refused to change his seeds. Even when people mocked him. Even when shame began to grow inside his heart, he continued watering the empty soil. After 1 full year, the kingdom gathered again in the palace courtyard. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone wanted to see which prince would become king. Prince Obina arrived first. His workers carried baskets full of healthy crops. The crowd cheered loudly. Prince Kemdelim arrived next with even larger harvest. The crowd murmured in admiration. Then Prince Chibuzo arrived. He carried nothing. His clothes were dusty from farm work. His hands were empty. Whispers filled the courtyard. Some people laughed quietly. Others shook their heads with disappointment. Chibuzo felt shame burning inside him. But he still stepped forward. After examining the harvest, the king stood up slowly. My people, he said, today we see the results of this test. He looked at Obina. You brought strong crops. Then he looked at Kemdelim. You brought even stronger harvest. Finally he looked at Chibuzo. And you brought nothing. The crowd murmured again. Then the king raised his staff. The seeds I gave my sons were boiled. Silence fell across the courtyard like a heavy cloth. They could never grow. The king's voice grew louder. So I ask you all, where did these crops come from? Prince Obina lowered his head. Prince Kemdelem could not speak. But Prince Chibuzo stood frozen in shock. Then the king turned and pointed at him. This man returned with empty soil because he refused to lie. The elders nodded slowly. The crowd began to understand. The king raised Chibuzo's hand before everyone. A man who cannot be trusted with seeds cannot be trusted with a kingdom. He placed the royal staff into Chibuzo's hands. Today, Prince Chibuzo becomes the next king of Umuokoro. Some people were shocked. Some were joyful. But the elders smiled quietly. Because they knew something many people forget. Strength can rule for a while. Cleverness can rule for a while. But only truth can rule for a lifetime. And that was how the quiet prince with an empty farm became the greatest king Umuokoro ever had.